here in a little bit, right?
I do. I'm actually jetting to the Four Seasons. I have a lunch meeting with Cliff Huxtable, but I wanted to give you your due time, and I know we have some important matters of business to discuss.
We do. The first matter of business I would like to talk about was your first introduction to a cinematic masterpiece called American Psycho, which of course was based on a literary masterpiece by the great Bret Easton Ellis, also called American Psycho. What can you tell me about first encountering this work of art?
Yes, I remember quite well. I had seen the advertisements on television sometime in 2000. And for whatever reason, I have a pretty good idea of the reason. I was drawn to the marketing. You know, it was very GQ, but very sinister at the same time. And my friends and I, one rainy day after school, headed over to the Cineplex, and we were obviously all under 17 at the time. I must have been, I guess I was probably 13 or 14. And we bought tickets to some other film, the name of which I can't recall, and proceeded to be dazzled and blown away by the magnificent Bret Easton Ellis adaptation by the very talented Mary Harron. And I was just blown away by Christian Bale. I'd never seen him in anything else. I know he was a child actor who was in Newsies, I believe, but I wasn't familiar with that particular movie. And it was one of those films, much like a lot of the Christopher Guest movies, like Best in Show, Mighty Wind, that through subsequent viewings, it became even richer, even funnier. And I've been really obsessed with the movie ever since. And then soon after that, I did learn to read, and read the novel probably a few years later, and was also blown away by that. And the detail, the amazing amount of detail in that novel. And here we are today, celebrating both pieces of art that I'm highly fond of.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, just absolutely excellent. Less Than Zero, another great Bret Easton Ellis story. So much richness and thematically so much to draw inspiration from. As you mentioned with the Christopher Guest movies, I would imagine that part of the unfolding revelation of the richness, the depth, all the layers to something like American Psycho is revealing itself to you as you yourself get older and experience more in life and see the world and those sort of things. You know, certain things are going to resonate with you that maybe didn't when you were a teenager, which just gives it new. It's like seeing it anew every single time. Christopher Guest, Spinal Tap comes to mind. It was funny already, but then once you're in a touring band, it's funny.
And those are always the best pieces of art that sort of age with you. You know, you appreciate it on one level in your youth, and as you become more worldly, and you just kind of go around the block, so to speak. You pick up all these other intricacies that maybe you didn't see on the first viewing.
I like that with the Silver Scream, you've already tackled some classic horror films that were themselves adapted from classic books, great books. The Shining, of course, comes to mind. And every trick in the book, you know, preceding the Silver Scream, it's sort of like this particular song, video, muse. It's almost like it incorporates both. Like it's kind of a sequel to, not only a direct sequel to the last record, but in some ways even a descendant of the record before. What prevented you from doing American Psycho last time, knowing how much you love the movie and how many movies you love that you were able to tackle? Why didn't this happen before, and why is now the right time?
I think just logistically, you have only so many songs that you can cover in one album, but American Psycho was always on that proverbial board, so to speak, of songs that I wanted to pay tribute to. Movies and literature that I wanted to pay tribute to. And I didn't want it to get shortchanged. And I try with what we do, the songs that we write, the videos that we create, we never want to force anything. And for whatever reason, now is the time. We just got through the 20th year anniversary of the film. And that's actually when I started writing the song. And it just came to fruition in a very organic way. And I think that we would not have been able to do what we did with this song 5 years ago. I think hopefully we continue to evolve as musicians and lyricists. And this is just it's such a brilliant film and such a brilliant book that we really, really wanted to do it justice. And I hope that we did.
And your, as Ice Nine Kills has really arrived at this peak in terms of the band's identity, really hitting a creative stride, really standing apart, while incorporating this theatricality and the heaviness and the melodies and the hooks, all of these things that are familiar to fans of the genre, and yet carving out this very unique space, especially with these film adaptations. Something I wanted to ask you about, obviously the silver screen did what it did and is what it is, and you're continuing down that path. But this isn't necessarily new for you. You have referenced American Psycho and, these things that you've always loved, going all the way back to the earliest iterations of the band when it was just kind of your high school, like pop punk thing. If you could tell me a little bit about that, how this has stayed with you and resonated and now found its way, this through line through Ice Nine Kills to now arriving at this fully embracing the American Psycho.
Yeah, absolutely. All the way back to the high school years. Definitely borrowed imagery from the film. I remember a very specific flyer for, I think, the first time we ever played in Philadelphia at this little bar, I think called The Fire, if memory serves. And it was the poster from American Psycho. And instead of, Patrick Bateman in the reflection of the blade, it was the band members. On our debut album in 2006, we had a song called Murders and Acquisitions, which of course is a reference to, when Patrick is asked by a woman in the club, what does he do? And he says murders and executions mostly. And she mistakenly hears him as mergers and acquisitions. So, it's something that, as you said, has always been sort of under the surface for me. I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've watched the film, and I can sort of quote it backwards and forwards. And I'm very grateful that the band is in a position where I can trick or treat in my mid 30s, and it all comes down honestly to how awesome the Ice Nine Kills fans, the Psychos, are, that they support what we do, and basically allow us to have such a fun and rewarding job that we don't take for granted.
Absolutely. One of the things, you mentioned the conversation with Bateman and a woman in the club. One thing that American Psycho has taken some heat for over the years, especially around the time of its release, is the idea that it's this kind of misogynistic fantasy, or that it's somehow woman hating. A couple of points about that. One, the film is satire. The book is satire, and I think that's something that gets lost. You mentioned at the top of our conversation the humor in American Psycho, and I think that's something to keep in mind. And the other thing is that behind the scenes creatively, there was not one but two women very involved in the execution of this film, no pun intended. I'm curious for your thoughts about that.
Absolutely. And Mary Harron, of course, as we mentioned before, excellent director. And the other woman who co-wrote the screenplay with her, I believe her name is Guinevere, if memory serves. She's actually in the movie as well. She plays Patrick's ex-girlfriend that ends up dying by way of a nail gun. Which is a whole other documentary in and of itself. But yeah, I mean, I think inherently the novel touches on the greed, the excess, the misogyny of the 1980s scene. And it's not, to me, it's not celebrating it. It's really making fun of it and showing you how ridiculous that it is. Patrick Bateman may look cool, but he's not a cool guy. And I think that it just brings us back to the age-old discussion of entertainment versus real life violence, and whether those two are interrelated. And I personally don't believe that they are. I believe entertainment, like many other forms of escapism, is just that, escapism. Yes. And I think that the people who get it, and the people who don't are never going to get it. But I can't think of any serial killer or anyone who murdered his wife that it came out in the news that they were a big horror movie fan. And I think that if that had happened, we would have heard about it. So I think it's make-believe. Kind of take it at what it is. And a hell of a lot of men die in the film too. And the most gruesome deaths are reserved for the men. So happy killing.
I mean, there are gruesome deaths all throughout Shakespeare and music. Johnny Cash shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. Life, death, these big ideas, the way that we process them, art is so important to that. And horror, of course, is just an extreme way of dealing with extreme situations. And I would often I have argued that not only do you not hear about people murdering because of horror movies, I wonder how many people have avoided murdering because of horror movies, because there's this or first person shooter video game or whatever it is, where they're able to get out this angst and this aggression and this energy that might have come out in real life violence if they didn't have this creative outlet to pursue instead.
Absolutely. And I've always said, use horror and aggressive violent cinema as an outlet for your demons and not a blueprint for your actions. And what's so interesting is I think there are a lot of preconceived notions about horror and horror fans, and they must be sick and twisted. But I've met a lot of people in my day, and all the fans that I meet at horror conventions, at the Ice Nine Kill shows, are some of the sweetest people you can ever meet. They might be covered in blood and might be wearing a shirt with a big hatchet on it going through someone's head, but they couldn't be more polite and genuine and sweet. So I think that that's where I sort of rest in peace on the issue.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that Ice Nine Kills and the Psychos, your devoted fans, have given you the opportunity to trick or treat well into adulthood, cosplay, role play, whatever we want to call it. And in terms of acting, we have seen you act in Ice Nine Kills stuff before. This time, I mean, I know it was a childhood dream of yours to play Patrick Bateman. What went into your preparation for that? What was that experience like? And I've got to give you this credit, and I'm sure the Psychos will be in the comments as soon as this video premieres with it as well. You were in excellent shape, and that had to be intimidating because that's such a big part of the Patrick Bateman character. So what all was involved in executing this dream of yours and becoming this guy?
Well, thank you very much for pointing that out. I think like most of us towards the beginning of quarantine, physical activity was pretty limited. I know, where I live, all the gyms were closed. I'm used to getting my cardio from playing shows and playing shows frequently. And, when I come off the stage, I look like I just took a swim in a river, just completely getting all my cardio. So at the beginning of quarantine, I think I maybe packed on a few LBs, and it came time to think about getting ready for the video. And I said, I gotta start doing something. So I was able to get some weights. I was able to start jogging around West Hollywood. And I enlisted a personal trainer, this guy, Terrence, who I knew back from Massachusetts. Awesome guy, great football player, and a professional trainer. So I worked out with him about 4 or 5 times a week.
Wow.
For about 2 months, and he came up with like a whole eating regimen and got rid of a lot of carbs, quit soda, and I really devoted myself to trying to get in shape for the video. Obviously, nowhere near Christian Bale level, but I really did give it my all, and thank you for pointing that out. As far as preparing for the dramatic portions of the video and the song, that's really just it came with the territory in terms of being a huge fan of the movie and spouting off that dialogue and doing his voice over the years. And
I was going to say, you've been preparing for it your whole life.
yeah, absolutely. And it was so fun to be recording with our producer Drew Falk, who did an excellent job producing the track, and just had a lot of fun with playing with the right tone of voice. And I don't know. Again, it was living out a fantasy, and I hope I did the character justice, because it's such a memorable, fun film. It's just like a really fun, horrific roller coaster ride.
Yeah, I'm remembering something that Andy Biersack from Black Veil Bride said recently, where he did the voice of Batman for a DC animated project. And he was like, there's a lot of things that I would need to work hard and prepare for. Playing Batman is not one of them.
Yeah, he's got that great voice, that deep voice. So I'm sure he killed that.
And he's just been, a Batman fan his whole life, the way that you're a fan of so many of these franchises. Let's talk about the director of this video that we're all about to see for the first time. And we'll, of course, be watching over and over and over. And also, spoiler alert, but we're going to see and hear a famous frontman from a very successful hard rock and metal band. So what can you tell me about how all that came together?
Yeah, we worked for the first time with Jensen and his producer, Phoenix. I had admired their work. They've done a lot of really impressive videos over the years. A lot of the newer Falling in Reverse clips, Popular Monster. They did some unbelievable Asking Alexandria videos. I think Into the Fire was one of them. And I sort of admired them from afar. And just randomly, Jensen reached out to me via Instagram, I want to say about a year ago, saying that he'd love to work with us. And I was, as I said, already very familiar with their work. And it just worked out beautifully. And I hope to continue to work with that team for quite a while. It was a very fun shoot. It was lighthearted. Everyone got along. And then, as far as the feature, we had done a tour just before the whole pandemic happened with Papa Roach and Hollywood Undead, and got a chance to meet those guys and hang out with Jacoby, who is couldn't be a sweeter individual, just one of the nicest guys I've ever met, not only in the entertainment business, but just in general, just such a down-to-earth dude. And I think I had sent him the song while we were on tour with them, because we had some sort of a demo of it, and he really dug it. And we reached out to see if he'd be interested in playing Paul Allen and singing on the song. And I've always just been a big fan of his voice, from all the way back, to when I was in high school. I remember he had got that really distinct voice, and I thought that he would fit perfectly with this track. He's got a great sense of humor, and I think he did Jared Leto proud, and really took the cake there with Paul Allen, which, of course, in the book is Paul Owen. For those of you who are fans of the novel, which it should have always been Paul Allen. Paul Owen, it just doesn't work. Yeah,
Paul Allen's. There's something a little stronger about that. Man, it's too bad. It's too bad Patrick Bateman's the older brother, because having this conversation is making me want to be the Sean Bateman to your Patrick Bateman.
Oh, of course.
Rules of Attraction.
Which, of course, right. Another great book and film.
Yeah, indeed.
It's actually Bret Easton Ellis says that that's his favorite film adaptation of his novels.
Is Rules of Attraction?
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's cool. Yeah, I really enjoyed that movie. It's been years since I saw it. I should revisit it. Ian Somerhalder was in that, right?
James Van Der Beek.
James Van Der Beek. Yeah, that was cool. So before we get to this video, I'm sure everyone watching this in advance of the video is quite anxious to see it, as they should be. We got to talk about Huey Lewis. The great Huey Lewis and the News, one of the most successful commercial rock and pop artists of all time. His music is a big part of the film American Psycho and is referenced by name. Let's talk about the relationship of Ice Nine Kills and Huey Lewis and this homage to Huey Lewis and the News that we're about to see in here.
Absolutely. You know, when you think of American Psycho, from an outsider perspective, people who aren't very familiar with it, they think it's a very dark film, which it is. Very dark film, very dark book. But as you said, and pointed out earlier, there's a great deal of satire that comes along with this. And one of the funniest elements to me of the film is that Patrick Bateman is such a big music fan and such a 80s music fan. Of course, the movie takes place in 87. And the juxtaposition of this sort of happy, 80s rock, some of the songs are yacht rocky, mixed with this unspeakable bloodshed is just so up my alley, something I've loved in films from some of the very first movies. I realized we're doing those tricks, like in Kubrick films, on Rob Zombie films. That juxtaposition of horror and harmless music, we'll call it, it has always been a big thrill for me. So I think we would be remiss if we were doing a song about American Psycho and didn't infuse some of those elements. And of course, what better song to use than Hip to Be Square, which of course our song is a play on that title, Hip to Be Scared. And when we got to the idea of creating the breakdown, Drew Falk and I sat down and worked out a very similar piece to Hip to Be Square. We didn't want to do the exact chords, for infringement reasons alone, you don't want to do it exactly. But the way it turned out, it's basically very similar to the original, even though the chords are different key. But we felt it was so similar that we had to, in fact, bring it to Huey Lewis's people. And luckily, through the grapevine, we've heard that he really enjoyed the video and the song and gave us his blessing. So this track is Huey Lewis approved, which it couldn't be a cooler thing for me to have our name associated with the great Huey Lewis.
Absolutely. And nobody wants to pull a Ray Parker Jr. with the Ghostbusters theme that sounded exactly like I Want a New Drug.
You can't do it. You can't do that. And I'm just so happy that it worked out, and he was very cool about it. And Huey, I know you're watching. Thank you so much.
Huey, huge shout out to Huey. And with that, let's cruise right into this video. Brand new Ice Nine Kills. This is the premiere. What should the psychos know seconds away from watching this video?
Know that there's a whole summer of more bloodshed to come. Enjoy Exhibit A. And I have to return some videotapes.